What's going to happen here? What's the next steps?
We'll come back in a special, I feel sure, to correct that issue. It will take us a couple of days. You know, the way the sunset process works is every 12 years agencies come up for review. It's very important. It gives legislators a chance to review an agency. We have committees that meet during the whole interim, as you know. Then the House and Senate come together. We had 10 sunset bills. They had 10 sunset bills. The Senate passed all of our sunset bills to them by middle of April. Mm-hmm. And at the end of session, they still had not passed several, including the Texas Medical Board. And so without the medical board, then you don't have any licensed doctors. I can't explain why it didn't come to the floor for a vote, but they sat there for 140 days and never voted it out.
Friday you said that you would allow it not to pass, though. You would allow the mistakes of the House to cause a special session. Explain why you think that is important.
Well, the Senate had a great session, and I give that credit to the senators. I don't take it for myself. We passed out 30 of 30 priorities that I listed at the beginning of the session. Most people thought, well, you can't, 30 priorities, how many are you going to pass? And 20 of those, Phil, will become law in one form or the other. But the House killed the other 10. And among those was property tax relief. I think that's the most important issue to people in Texas. Whether you own a home or you live in an apartment where the rents are going up because the property taxes of the apartment owner are going up. If you have a business, property taxes are going up. And we, the governor and I agree on this, we need to roll back the rate of growth. We need to give people an automatic vote so their taxes can't go up more than 4 or 5% a year, population inflation, and the House just refused to pass that bill. What
happens if he doesn't? What's your thoughts on if he just says, come back and do the Texas Medical Board and then go home?
That's his call. I believe that we ought to address these two issues, but he's the governor.
The session ended on pretty tense terms. House, nothing in the Senate.
Nothing in the Senate. We were calm all session. We were efficient all session. We passed our bills on time all session. We were fine. No protest in the Senate this session.
Is that kind of the cost to pay, though, on just kind of tackling some of these divisive issues?
Sure. Look, these are very interesting political times all across the country. But you never want to see this, you never want to see what happened yesterday on the House floor or in the gallery, and it was unfortunate. We didn't have that issue in the Senate.
If these two things are on the call, I mean, couldn't the House just not pass it in a special session?
It's possible. He has indicated he would not bring these bills up. But look, there are 115 Republicans in the House and the Senate, 20 and 95. 100 of 115 have either already voted for or co-authored the Texas Privacy Act.
Now, would you delay the Texas Medical Board in a special session until the House at least brought those issues to the floor?
We need to look, I want to be very clear. We did all of our work in the Senate on the sunset bills that we were assigned by the middle of April. The House didn't do their work. In fact, they didn't do much at all in February, March, or most of April. They did very little. And that's what got them in trouble. They got up against these deadlines and these calendars. They passed about 1,000 bills to us, and over 60%, or around 60%, came to us the last several weeks. And so they put themselves in a bind by not having a calendar that worked and not having a plan that worked. And they kept slowing, and eventually caught up with them. So we need to pass that bill, but we need it to be a clean bill. This is the whole point. Their patch, their amendment to a Senate bill, again, not germane, many think not even constitutional, and didn't solve the problem. They need a bill on the floor that their members are allowed to debate. It only gets reviewed every 12 years. It's not something you work on for a year and a half before session starts and in session and say, oh, it's just amended to a bill and not let people talk about it.
But this leadership probably wouldn't move if we do call a special session on those topics.
Yes.
And it doesn't be brought to the floor. Can you or the governor do anything about that?
The governor has great power. The governor has great power. But if you do have someone who opposes the will of the people of Texas, I mean, if you have a speaker, and he's a nice guy, it's not personal, but if you have a speaker who decides he's going to be against the governor, against lieutenant governor, against the Republicans in the Senate, against the Republicans in the House, and most importantly against the people of Texas, then that's a problem.
In your budget, $800 million still for border security. Yes. Any word from the Trump administration? Have you talked to them? I mean, Are we going to continue to do that, or are we going to get our money back at some point?
Well, I have asked both of our senators, as well as our congressional, some in our congressional delegation, not all, but I've spoken to the key people, and said that we would like to recover some of the money we have spent to do the government's job the last several years. And I'm hopeful that that happens at some point. We recover some of that money. And some people said, well, you know, the border crossings are down, and which they are dramatically. It's interesting. Trump hasn't built a wall, but just by saying he's going to build a wall, I mean, people coming across the border, or you know, that's down. Drugs that are confiscated, down. I mean, a lot of things are much more secure. But we can't take the chance in Texas to drop our guard. So until we see the federal government actually do something, besides talking about it, which has had a big impact, but that can change tomorrow, or you know. So we have to stay on. We have to stay vigilant. Remember these stats, and this is like the sanctuary city bill. People complain about that, or that we're spending $800 million to secure the border. From 2011 until this year, the beginning of this year, we arrested over 200,000 criminal aliens in Texas, and we charged them with over 500,000 crimes. And of those criminal aliens, 2/3 were here illegally, and that included over 1,000 murders, over 6,000 sexual assaults, 67,000 drug crimes, hundreds of kidnappings. I mean, this is real. The majority of the people are crossing the border trying to come here for a job, but with them is a growing number of gang members and hardened criminals. So this is why Senate Bill 4 was important in sanctuary cities. It does not make cities safer. It makes us more dangerous when the criminals know I can come to this city and I can kind of hide in plain sight. And that's why we have to keep our vigilance on the border.
Is that a sustainable solution, though, to do $800 million every year, year after year?
Well, that's a lot of money, but put this in perspective. Our budget's $217 billion.
Yeah.
It's $800 million of $217 billion to protect people's lives. So I think it is important for us to maintain that. And I didn't, you know, I had some pushback because, you know, I campaigned on that 2 years ago, and I had some pushback last year. Well, we spent it, and even, look, the Valley, pretty much all the elected officials, sheriffs and constables, everybody, the mayor, they're all Democrat for the most part. There's a few exceptions. They were skeptical at first. Well, we don't want this interference. Now, when I go down to the Valley, which I do quite frequently, they say, Governor, don't stop the money coming. The Valley itself has never been safer. Never been safer. So they support it, and now we had support. We had a little pushback by the House, but they agreed.
Conservatives had a pretty good session.
Had a great session. The most conservative in the history of the state.
Why not just chalk up a win and let everybody go home?
Well, again, we passed all 30 of our priorities out of the Senate. 20 of them, in one form or the other, will become law. But property taxes that passed the Senate again, and Texas privacy that passed the Senate again, are two important issues to the public, and they didn't pass. And people expect us to get the job done on those issues. One is a very important social issue. It impacts how people feel about their kids going to school, about their daughters going into a restroom somewhere, and a man could follow them in. Again, not a transgender person, someone dressed like us. There's no data that any transgender person has ever committed any crimes. It's not about, it's never been about. It's a very tiny part of the population. The whole point of the Texas Privacy Act is that once you allow men to go into a ladies' room, any man can take advantage of it by simply walking in and saying, I identify as a woman so I can be here. That makes a woman feel uncomfortable, and that could make her not very safe. And so that's what this is important. And then the other issue is a fiscal issue, trying to reduce people's property taxes. They're already too high. We're trying to stem them from getting higher and higher. And if we don't take action on this, it's going to really hurt our economy and our state.